It is a little chilly. I'm going to shut that door.
It's cold in here.
Yes, yes. Let us know when it's coming. Is what? Probably. I don't know how many days she was taking off.
Jennifer's here tomorrow. Okay.
How's that, Michelle? Who else we got? We got, okay. Percy. This is Brad Bowen that is going to address you. Yeah.
Okay. Call this meeting to order. This is the Select Board meeting for Thursday, September 23rd. The first item on the agenda is a salute to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we want to move two to four?
No, let's get through and
Okay.
that will give some calming down time. All right, accept a motion on approval of the agenda.
I make a motion we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, approval of the minutes of the last meeting.
I make a motion we approve the minutes of the last meeting as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have nothing under old business. Under new business, we have some guests this evening from York County Community Action. Would you like to give us an update about how you're serving our community?
Thank you. My name is Brad Bohan. I work for York County Community Action, and I asked to speak with the selectmen this evening and with the townspeople to describe a little bit about, tell you a little bit about what we do in your community, but more importantly, to hear from you. We're in the process of conducting a community needs assessment, which means we need to ask you, what do you need? What does your community need? What are the issues and problems that you or your friends or your neighbors may be facing right now? It's a very tough economy. We're finding that we're seeing a greater number of people coming into our facility in Sanford for the first time. These are people who have lost jobs, whose spouses may have lost jobs, whose hours have been cut back. And so what I hope to do is to tell you a little bit about us and then ask you to tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in Acton and how we can respond to the needs of the people in Acton. York County Community Action, for those of you who don't know, is a community action agency that covers all of York County, about 1,000 square miles, everything from Kittery to Scarborough. We have 3 main sites, Sanford, Kittery, and Biddeford, but we also are spread out all over the place. We have 17 Head Start programs, and they cover a lot of the smaller communities, a lot of smaller towns. We have community outreach programs in various parts of the county. We have a transportation program that covers everything. You probably see our blue and white buses or our wave vans. We have a very large volunteer driver program, 115 drivers, covered something like 4 million miles last year. And just in the town of Acton, I was looking at some data that we have. We haven't got it completely compiled yet because our year doesn't end until the end of October. But last year, to date, the volunteer drivers transported Acton residents for 68,000 miles. Now, the year before that, it was 35,000 miles. So we've doubled the number of miles that the volunteer drivers are transporting Acton residents. And there are only 3 reasons, or 4 reasons, why a volunteer driver would, or the reason a volunteer driver can transport a person: for mental, dental, or medical appointments, or a foster child, taking him to or taking a foster parent to meet with a foster child. So the numbers are growing, and they're growing not just in Acton, but in Leamington and Limerick and in Cornish and in Biddeford and Saco. And so what we're trying to do now is to reach out to ask you, first of all, are we meeting the needs of the community? And secondly, are there needs that we're not aware of that you may know about? We are comprised of 7 main programs: WIC, Head Start, Housing, Transportation, Energy Services, Community Outreach, and York County Community Health Care. Now, each of those programs has within it other programs. An example might be Community Outreach, which is a program that connects people in need with resources. If there's a client who is having a housing issue, maybe homeless, we may connect them with York County Shelter, or with a faith-based group who can find shelter for them, or a food bank for someone who needs food, or a domestic issue, we may go to Caring Unlimited. We connect with a lot of different agencies, a lot of different social networks. But within community outreach, there are other programs. Access to Justice, which provides information about legal documents and legal processes. And York County Saves, which can help York County residents with budgeting issues. Or York County Cash, which can provide free tax prep services to eligible residents. That's just an example of how broad our reach is. It's really, it's an extraordinary institution, York County Community Action, because we try to do 2 things. We try to be proactive, to look forward, and that's what we're doing tonight, looking forward to see what may be out there that we're not noticing, or things that you notice and we may notice, but ways in which we need to respond. And reactive, or I'd rather say responsive. When an issue occurs, we are able to address it. An example of proactive may be our foreclosure prevention workshops that we started about 2 years ago. The state of Maine right now, if you don't know, is number 4 nationwide per capita for foreclosures. Now, it wasn't that way 6 months ago. It's almost as though the wave has moved from the west to the east. And in Maine, there are an estimated 11,000 homes that are at risk of foreclosure. We have brought on board our housing program 2 foreclosure prevention specialists who, if they can help, will help and do help. They can work with lenders and bankers and courts or judges or those sorts of institutions. But again, if they can, it doesn't mean they always will be able to. So proactive means we looked ahead before there was a large wave of foreclosures and started addressing that issue. What I'd ask you, the select persons and the townspeople, is to tell us. I have Martha and our director here from Community Outreach. If you'd like to tell us what we can do to help you. So that's what I'm asking.
Do you need it? You want an answer now?
You know what? If you can't, all right.
Think about this and...
No, that's perfectly fine. We do have a website, www.yccac.org, and on that website is a little contact us. That link will come directly to me, and I will go directly to the community outreach, or the transportation, or the housing programs, and I would ask you to talk to your families, talk to your friends, talk to your co-workers about these sorts of things. Every community, every town, every city in Maine, but we're focused on York County, is having a very difficult time right now. and it's not going to get any easier in the near future. So again, the request is, how can we help you, and how can we help your friends and your children and your families? And that's what I have to say.
With the increase in services that you're putting out, are you getting increased funding?
No, not really. We're doing more with less, as everyone is. There's just not a lot of money out there for social services. There's not a lot of money out there for anyone. We just had released over the past, I guess 2 days ago, funding for our LIHEAP program. A note about LIHEAP: ordinarily, in past years, we have accepted LIHEAP applications. LIHEAP is Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program for residents who can't afford to pay their heating bills, their heating costs, and are eligible. We have in the past begun taking applications in late August through September, and the program would begin on October 1st. This year, the funding was held up. It was just postponed, essentially. It was held back. So we are not able to take those applications until October 1st. Now, that doesn't mean we're way back, that we're starting October 1st with a huge rush. We were able to send out LIHEAP applications, over, I think, 1,400, and to get those back. To give you perspective, last year we provided LIHEAP assistance to 6,400 residents in York County, which is about $4.2 million worth of services. October 1st is the date where we actually start taking clients, meeting with clients in town halls, in our Sanford office, and new this year, something that I just found out about 3 hours ago, we're going to be able to, the residents of York County are going to be able to schedule their own appointments online on our website. So if you're you need to schedule an appointment to complete a LIHEAP application, you can go on our website, there's a little link there, and you can schedule it yourself, rather than trying to call us and getting put on hold or being told you'll be called back or something like that. So the long way around to the answer is no, we're working with fewer dollars now than we have in past years, but we're seeing a tremendous number of clients we've never seen before, first-time clients. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we, of course, will be seeing you again come budget season, because
I will.
yeah, we do, every year, we do give money, not nearly enough to cover the cost of the resident services that we receive, but we will see you and look forward to hearing from you again.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving forward, we wanted to have a discussion regarding the Warrant and Finance Committee and their role in the town, both past and present, and most importantly, future. And in very much the same way that we did with the Road Committee, looking at what town meeting approved in an ordinance and interpreting that ordinance and giving some direction to know how to move forward. We have some guests with us this evening that will help shed some light on past kind of approach to the Warrant and Finance Committee. Mr. Lotz is here and Mr. Chase is here. And they, I believe, were both on the Warrant and Finance Committee or either in 1986 or very close to that when the last, I know Mr. Chase was because he was on the committee for 27 years, but good, I think he has the award, so I think 82 to 2009. But I'm not sure about Mr. Lotz. What years were you on?
I don't remember the years. I was on the committee 12 years and was chairman 9 years.
Okay, so the last ordinance rather that we adopted as a town at town meeting regarding the Warrant and Finance Committee was in March of 1986, and it was Article 55. Do you want to read? Do you want me to read? What would you like to have happen here?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm not going to read article. There's another one that was passed, the original one in 1972. I don't feel that that one is as important, only because the 1986 ordinance would trump that, and there would be nothing in the 1972 ordinance that would continue to be relevant. If that's okay, Mr. Point, is that?
Yeah, one question though, I did see, do I need to come
Yeah.
up or?
Yes, please. And I know who you are, but if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I am Paul Poyant. I am this year's Warrant and Finance Committee Chair. So I am trying to iron out a few questions. My first comment about what you just said, Larissa, is that, okay, I think we're all set. The second one, Article 55, does specifically say that's an ordinance.
Right.
The first one does not.
Right. And
So as long as we have trumping going on, we really have no outstanding issues.
I think we have some trumping, so we're going to go
Okay.
ahead with the trump card here.
We're good.
So Article 55 from Town Meeting, March 1986 reads, "Shall an ordinance entitled Acton Warrant and Finance Committee be enacted? This ordinance shall establish the method of selection and responsibilities of the members of the committee. This ordinance is enacted pursuant to authority granted in Title 30, Sections 1917 and 2151. Purpose: the committee shall be an advisory committee to the selectmen and to the voters at town meetings. The committee shall investigate special articles within the warrant to obtain factual data or surveys to determine financial impact on the town. 1. There shall be 6 members to the committee. 2. Members to the committee shall be nominated at large from the floor. 3. The members of the committee shall serve for a 2-year period, 3 members elected each year. 4. A chairman shall be elected from within each year. 5. 4 members present at a meeting shall constitute a quorum. 6. The committee shall be called by the selectmen or the chairman of the committee. 7. The selectmen shall be non-voting members of the committee. 8. The committee shall give a recommendation on all articles of the warrant except those pertaining to municipal election." So that is the article that we are working with, and that was approved at town meeting. So that is the ordinance that governs the Warrant and Finance Committee and all of its actions. So starting from there, our current chair, Mr. Poyant, had some questions that he wanted our input on, and I think that that is fair, and we as a board agreed that that was a good idea, and thank you for taking the time to come up with those. So how would we like to do this? Do you want to just start one question at a time and get people's input, past, present, and so forth, and we'll go from there?
I am hardly ever the soul of brevity, and I recognize we have a narrow block of time here. However you think, we can most efficiently get through this and get the information we need, I'm game for it.
You are pretty much the only item on the agenda this evening, so our narrow block of time is not nearly as narrow as it might be.
I did see 2 other items on the end.
They're very short, though. Very short.
It's just a sign that we're done.
Yeah, you are the meat and potatoes of this course. Okay, so the first question requested clarifications, if I may. From these articles, it would appear that the Warrant and Finance Committee, quote, "shall investigate and then we're skipping quite a bit here, all articles of the warrant except those pertaining to municipal election to obtain factual data or surveys to determine financial impact on the town." My first comment to that, let's ask the question though. However, these instructions may be readily interpreted in a variety of ways, so that separate individuals who are each diligently attempting to fulfill their obligations to the Warrant and Finance Committee or other committees, boards that are diligently working with the Warrant and Finance Committee may run into conflict due to their differing understanding of those obligations. The purpose of this joint meeting, or this clarification session, is to clarify the intent of Article 55. So in looking at that, I guess I'm going to just toss out my thought on that first, and then I would encourage those that are in the know to toss them out as well. The article reads in the first, the committee shall investigate special articles within the warrant to obtain factual data or surveys to determine financial impact on the town. The interesting word there to me is investigate special articles. So, for instance, we had the Sam Page Road project this year, we had fire trucks, capital reserve account this year, we had the baler at the transfer station this year. Those are special articles. Further on, it says that the committee shall...
I think your definition is incorrect, but I'll speak to that later.
I hope you do. Yeah. On Section 8, it says, shall give a recommendation on all articles of the warrant except those pertaining to municipal election. So my interpretation of that, and I think that we're going to hear a different one, is that those are 2 separate functions. That we're asking the Warrant and Finance Committee to give a recommendation on all articles that are on the warrant that are not municipal articles, but we're asking them to actually investigate special articles to obtain factual data or surveys to determine financial impact on the town. I think that those are two separate charges. One is saying, listen, when there's a special warrant article, we want you to go that extra mile, come up with that factual data and surveys to determine the financial impact. All the other articles, you know, from the department heads and so forth with their budgets, we'd like you to give us a recommendation. So I'll toss that out on the floor as my interpretation, and then certainly the purpose of this is to get other people's interpretation and so that we can come to some sort of final understanding. So Mr. Chase, do you want to address that?
Quickly, because Bill just had his back already on, he's not going to last very long.
Oh, Bill, I'm sorry.
I'm Tom Chase. I was on the committee. I replaced Bernard Holsworth's last half of his term when he retired. So that's why I have an odd number of years. The special articles that they refer to, because the Warrant Finance Committee has to act on every article. The special articles they're referring to is when it charges us, the selectmen, to do X with the advice and consent of the Warrant Committee. Those are the special articles that they're talking about, because otherwise it's just a normal thing. So with the advice and consent of the Warrant Committee, you can sell a piece of equipment, right, or buy something surplus, or whatever it is. That's the special articles they're talking about, and that is separate from our acting on every article.
Okay.
I mean, that's the special article, where we are acting outside of just acting on articles. We're advising you, which means it's like the Senate, advice and consent. You want to sell something, you come to us, you say you want to, sorry, long habit. You come to the Warrant and Finance Committee and say, okay, we want to sell this. If the Warrant and Finance Committee does not agree, then you can't sell it. Okay. So that is the special articles. That's where you're acting not in the town meeting and not, it's a special, completely different thing.
How are those articles, Tom?
Those articles are typically written if you want to sell something with it.
Well, for instance, if we've got 15,000 this year and we want to buy a piece of equipment.
Right.
We have to ask the Warrant and Finance Committee to meet with us to discuss, is it wise, can we buy this piece of equipment?
But right, that wouldn't be, that's not set up as an article, so that is.
No, yes, it's set up as an article, authorizing the selectmen, because it's an article every year if you purchase. Okay, those are the special articles it's referring to.
So that settles that question
right because
there.
Otherwise it's just a normal article and you're making a recommendation to the town.
Okay, great. And Bill, you're in concurrence on that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to come talk to us about your interpretation of the Warrant and Finance Committee?
I said it was a lot better. Until I sat in that chair.
Elaine, you pull that one chair out, and then they'll have a pathway. They haven't got to go all the way around.
You'd be better off standing up.
Yeah, I'm better standing up. I'm Bill Lotz. 13 days ago I had surgery on my spine, and I'm feeling so much better, but that chair hits me right on the scar. And I've got a huge bandage on my lower back. But anyway, a few quick comments prior to answering the original question. First, it's great fun every night looking on Channel 6 and seeing our Selectman Ted on the Kennybunk Savings ads. He's becoming a TV star. It's terrific. Every evening, once or twice, I see Ted's smiling face advertising Kennybunk Savings Bank.
And asking if he has enough retirement savings.
I
put in the bank, his pictures on one of those. Post office too.
I called him yesterday and said, expect to see you on Dancing with the Stars any day. Just a quick item. We all know that a member of our town stole $30,000 from the PTG.
No, not tonight, Bill.
And that same woman handles the financing.
Bill, that's not what we're talking about tonight.
It's an important issue that needs to be talked about.
No, this is tonight, Bill, this is what we're talking about.
I was chairman of the Finance Committee for 9 years. Tom and I were on it together back in '86. And the Finance Committee had one responsibility: advise and consent, just as Thomas said and just as you've read. That's the only responsibility the Finance Committee has, is advise and consent to the selectmen.
And to the town meeting.
And to the town meeting, period. And we vote, as we all know, we vote on every article presented to us by the selectmen and by the school committee. And that was it. We did When I first became chairman, we did do a brief study about the possibility of having our own police department. And it didn't cost anything, and at that time Dean Knight was a selectman, and he very quickly tossed the whole thing out and said it was a waste of time. He didn't want to have a special town police force in Acton. But that's it. That's it. That's the only responsibility. Sure as God made green apples, the Finance Committee never ever has the responsibility of generating warrant articles, for instance. Absolutely not. That's not the job of the Finance Committee, is to generate a warrant article.
Okay.
Any questions?
I think that, thank you, and thank you for coming back too.
Okay, I'm going home.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lotz. Okay, so the first question was, how to interpret the responsibilities and what they're being charged with. And so we've heard from the past members that the charge is to advise and make recommendations, that is the only charge. From the ordinance passed, I guess I would have to agree with that. There is nothing in that, now that I've had my special articles question answered, there is nothing in there that goes outside of that charge. Does anyone else have, on our board, have any thoughts on?
No, I agree. I think we're all set on that one.
Okay, Paul, does that answer your
Well,
question?
let me just make sure. Well, there's
That
definitely
first
a
question?
couple of other points that we need to iron out, but I'll just make sure that what's already been said is more or less within the confines of this article. Okay. Advisory committee to the selectmen and to the voters at town meeting. Okay, that definitely was said.
So I think that the advisory committee to us takes place in those special articles, that's where they are giving advice to us, and that would be my interpretation, and that the second half of that statement to the voters of town meeting, their recommendations that are on the warrant are their recommendations to town meeting.
Right, so what I'm hearing is we have a set of articles which are complete and full-blown when we get them to review.
Yes.
In the instance where we have an article that is, in our judgment, something that perhaps should not pass in its current form, so we would say no, okay? I mean, obviously, there are two answers, yes and no. Clearly, if there is an article that has to pass in some form, there are many of those. What is the most productive way to go about that? Obviously, we would want to explain to some degree to the town body in writing, so they have it and nobody has to come up and say, gee, why did you vote no? And also, we need to have some way of suggesting an alternative that perhaps is more palatable to the committee, which of course would somehow change the content of the thing. I know financial articles cannot be raised, and presumably given the financial overview responsibility of the committee, if anything, it'd be going down. So that would be fine on town floor. But I've seen in the past that we don't necessarily always see something beyond should not pass. So part of my questions is, how would we in the most productive manner say, should the committee say, looking at this article and say, gee, should not pass, okay, now what? We're here on the floor of town meeting. We have what is some form of dissension as far as whether something should pass or not. What is the town body to do with the minimum amount of information? We obviously don't want to be dragging on the town meeting any more than we have to. How would we best go about advising, advice and consent, the town body as to what theoretically should happen as an alternative to the article that is presented? Of course, very brief comments.
What I saw from the process last year being on the school board, if the Warrant and Finance Committee is at all of the meetings, meeting with the different departments and seeing how the budget is being developed and how the warrant articles are being developed, you put your opinion in then. But of course, then the governing body, in the case of the school board or here with the selectmen, we still get to make the final decision, and we write it and present it to the town the way we want to. But then, if the Warrant and Finance Committee has, we do not agree, or this should not pass, that's when you have your chance to get up and tell the townspeople your reasoning for that.
Okay, so that would be a verbal thing, is what you're saying.
I think that
You have a verbal through the whole process, but you also have the verbal in front of the town. And with the television now, your verbal through the whole process will be getting out to the public.
the only, I agree with Ted for the most part. I mean, the school board and the select board, they are the ultimate people that will put forward the warrant. But my only concern with that is if a warrant and finance committee member has been assigned as the liaison, if you will, with the school board. So I think you have 2 this year.
Yes.
They are not a quorum, and so they are at that point, they're gathering information to bring back to the committee. And so if they're giving feedback during the meeting when the budget is being discussed, they haven't had a chance to discuss that with the committee and be giving feedback on what the committee as a whole thinks. They'd only be able to give feedback on what they as an individual felt. So there would need to be some sort of, set up so that the school board, when it's budget season, they meet twice a month. So if the Warrant and Finance Committee, the 2 members that are supposed to be connecting with the school board, if they are there at one meeting, then they're discussing the budget and they are hearing something that is not settling well with them, and they bring it back to the committee and present that, and the Warrant and Finance Committee says, yeah, we really think that might be a little out of line as well, then at the next meeting would be when they would be able to present the Warrant and Finance Committee's objections. So it would need to be staggered a little bit. It couldn't be we're hearing a budgeting item that we're concerned with and we're going to respond immediately, because they'd need to be speaking as a committee, and they couldn't do that at that meeting.
Right.
But I think that as long as that step is put in, that I would agree with Ted that the process is ongoing, and that it is probably most productive to have the concerns being addressed throughout the budget season.
Instead of at the end. Yeah.
Tom, do you want to give some feedback on that?
Yeah. When the Warrant and Finance Committee attends a meeting like the school board, they're gathering information to take back to the committee. If they speak at that meeting, they're speaking as a citizen, not as a member.
What I said, yep.
When they come back, the only way that I would think that you could actually get feedback on particular things was have them bring something back that they had voted on in writing from the Warrant and Finance Committee. Even then, when they speak, the minute somebody defends anything or speaks about it, they can't speak for the Warrant and Finance Committee, because the entire Warrant and Finance Committee has not heard it. They can only speak as citizens. So it's going to have to be, in order to do it, I mean, I know we've done it very informally, and I know that you're going to, the school board is going to try to get as much input as they can. But you have to realize that when anybody speaks at those meetings, they're not a member of the Warrant and Finance Committee. They're a citizen. They have a right to speak, but they don't encumber the Warrant and Finance Committee.
Unless we do a joint meeting.
Unless you do a joint meeting, or in fact, if they go back, if something, you're going to spend, put a $100,000 irrigation system, and they say, well, this is stupid, we don't have the money for that, and they go back and the Warrant and Finance Committee says, look, we think, in writing, we think you ought to revisit this, but because I don't think this is ever going to pass. So, maybe you would put that's perfectly fine. But when they're there, they can't speak as members of the Warrant and Finance Committee. They can ask questions to gather information, and they can speak as citizens. I mean, that's the important thing. Just because they're a Warrant and Finance Committee member, that they have no more force in a school board meeting than Joe Blow off the street.
Right, so we agree on that point.
Absolutely.
So, does that help answer that first clarification question?
I think the only point on this particular topic that we're still somewhat drawing a fine line is the thing about absolutely the Finance Committee is not involved with writing warrant articles.
Right.
Okay? So here we have a scenario whereby the liaisons bring information back to the committee. The committee's, and I don't know why the committee would even be talking about it at that point, because they don't have an article to consider and are not supposed to be influencing the writing process, but let's just put that aside for now. So they talk about it for whatever reason, and then decide to impart some information upstream where perhaps they have no business doing that, because we're not supposed to be micromanaging, we're not supposed to be writing articles.
I think there's a difference, Paul. There's a subtlety there.
I'm being somewhat inflammatory here because I'm trying to draw a fence around what is permissible and what is not.
Well, I think that there's a subtlety that's missing in that, yes, it is not the job or the right of the Warrant and Finance Committee to write articles, but I think it does help things move more smoothly at town meetings and so forth, and I think it's completely appropriate if the Warrant and Finance Committee, who very often does represent kind of the financial voice of the town. I mean, in years past, at town meeting, very often, if the selectmen recommended one amount of money be spent on something, and the Warrant and Finance Committee recommended a second amount that was lower, very often that lower number was going to be what was passed. So I think the benefit is to have the Warrant and Finance Committee, so let's say on the first Tuesday of the month, they're at this, well, let's use our board, let's stop picking on the school board. Let's say that they come to a meeting and they hear us talking about how we're going to have this brand new senior center that we're going to build, and we're going to ask the townspeople for $500,000 to be put forward. And they say, whoa, that's not going to work well. I think that it's completely appropriate for the Warrant and Finance Committee in one of our meetings to say, listen, we have this concern about what's happening with this, and we just want to let you know that if you are going to continue to pursue this, we're going to be forced to recommend against it. I don't think that that's crossing a line there. It's different than if they were to say, if they're not writing the article at that point, they're doing what they're supposed to in that they are kind of advising and giving insight. I think there's a subtlety there and it can go too far, but I think that that is what they're supposed to do to some extent.
So whatever information trickles downstream in whatever schedule and whatever form it happens to be, whether it's a piece of paper, hey, would you look at this and comment, or, you know, rumor mill, small town, it can potentially just trickle back up the same way, and it's not necessarily against the spirit of what is supposed to be happening. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence on that as well, because I think that if you have absolutely no input, you know, if we're operating in a vacuum until the very end and are forced to kind of work with whatever shows up, I think the result to the town does not have as high a value as if there was some form of collaboration, you know, or at least a minor form of feedback during the course of the season. And I think I'm hearing that, but I'm wary about how we would do it without stepping over a line.
Well, we're trying to do that by having a liaison to each committee. Like I'm the Warrant and Finance Committee liaison. So
right. You
come to one of our board meetings, or whoever is the representative to the Selectmen, and have an issue, bring it back to the Warrant and Finance Committee meeting. I'll be at the Warrant and Finance Committee meeting to hear what you're saying, and I will be bringing it back to the other Selectmen at our next meeting.
Yeah.
So that's why we set that up.
So you're not sending the citizen back to the board.
No.
You know, and saying, and as a citizen, you know.
No, I'm coming to your meeting as a citizen.
So yeah, and you're just sort of hearing what you hear, and the old rumor mill in reverse, and there you go. Okay, that makes good sense to me.
I think Mr. Chase would like to chime in on this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're missing the point on the non-voting member deal. That means you are a member. It is incumbent upon all of you to go to the called Warrant and Finance Committee meetings because you are members. Your input, the only thing you can't do is vote. Okay. You are going to speak on everything, and if you have the 3 selectmen there and you hear people from the Warrant and Finance Committee that say, okay, we should do this, we should write this article this way, that's the way it's going to be the best for the town. Mm-hmm. You hear that, and if you don't do it, it's still your responsibility to write the warrant articles. It's their responsibility. You have given, because the selectmen are members, and everyone should be at the Warrant and Finance Committee meetings. It's not a representative. You're all members, and it's very important, particularly when you come to budgetary things, that you be there so that you understand that the Warrant and Finance Committee has concerns about this, and they are going to, and we've done that many times, besides the articles one way or the other, with the selectmen setting in on the meetings, because they are members, they speak, they are treated exactly the same. The only difference is they can't vote. All right, so it's not just your responsibility to go, everybody's responsibility to go.
And that happened in the past where you'd have all 3 selectmen?
Yes.
I actually, I have to disagree a little bit on that, Tom. The year that I was on the
I'm
board.
not talking about the last 5 years, I'm talking about...
Okay,
so,
because
yes,
my
yes.
experience was not that there were selectmen at the meetings, and I think that
We
it's
were lucky to
also-
have one.
Right, and so I guess we went through this last year, this was a rather big deal. It is, I think, a little odd to have the selectmen be part of the conversation that is generating the recommendation of the Warrant and Finance Committee. We have our opportunity to make a recommendation, it's our warrant. And for me, or for us as a board, to be part of the conversation that's generating the advice to us seems very, it seems muddied. That there.
Well, the whole idea behind that was to get the selectmen and the Warrant and Finance Committee together so that they could give you advice directly and come up with the best article, because the articles are your responsibility. So it always was that case, and it's not, you should be at every meeting and advocating for what you want to do, and it's their job to convince you otherwise. I mean, and that's why you're on that committee. You're on that committee because you need to be there, not only to steer the committee, but tell them why you're doing what you're doing, so that you may convince them that, okay, yeah, makes reasonable sense, we should put this before the town. Because they only have power to recommend to the town, you only have power to recommend to the town. Once the town votes,
Right.
it's your duty to do what the town told you to do. Beyond that, they can't say too much. That's your job. Everything else is regarding the next year and how things are going to go. So you've got to keep it separate. Once you're voted for this year, you have to do, your executive power is you. Unless you want to ask the Warrant and Finance Committee, which is why sometimes, okay, we're thinking of doing this, what do you think? Then it becomes, dealing with current year. But other than that, this year is over. You are the executives, you do the town's bidding.
Right.
So are there 6 members or are there 9 members?
There are 9 members, but there are only 6 voting.
But that brings us to another question, is that the article does contradict itself.
It says non-voting members.
But it says that the committee there shall be 6 members on the committee.
Yes, well, 6 elected members. We wrote the article wrong, there's no question about it, but there's 6.
Okay,
There's 6
so there is
members.
clarification that does need to take place in the warrant article, and whether that means that the Warrant and Finance Committee this year could be working on, with the select boards, working together to recreate an article to change the ordinance so that it's clearer.
Yep.
I also,
And maybe that's the case. I always thought it was pretty clear myself, but...
but if we can look back,
Or literal-minded, it's muddy.
if we can also look back over 5 years and say, look, for the last 5 years or so, the select board has not been attending Warrant and Finance Committee meetings, that is not been something that's been taking place. And for myself, I really do feel, especially when the Warrant and Finance Committee is meeting with the school board, I have no voice there. I shouldn't have a voice there. The school board is its own executive board. We have no say over their warrant. We have no say over how they spend their money.
You have a say over the articles. That, don't you?
No, we are required by law to put forth the warrant that they give us. So,
Yeah, well, yeah, that's another thing. When you mentioned about you can't raise an article, you notice that the state law articles for the school board say to see what sum. You can vote any amount of money you want to vote on those. And that's why we stopped it here, because that's what we always had.
yes, I understand. But so I think that that is one of the things that will undoubtedly come up again this year. I will not sit and give feedback on the school board's budget. I will not do so as a selectman. I would do so as a citizen. That is, because I pay taxes and they are a separate executive board. But I think that that's crossing a line that I'm not willing to cross. The school board does not sit in on our meetings and give us input on what our budget should be. And it is not appropriate for us as an executive board to sit with them as an executive board and tell them how to write their articles either.
From my standpoint, it's totally appropriate. You are responsible for the entire town, not just the school board.
And we will have a
The only thing-
philosophical disagreement, and that will be okay.
Yes, right. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Does that give you any clarification?
How much time do we have?
Well, we have a few more questions to
Okay,
go.
well, all right. So the example that you gave previously, I'll fruitlessly chase the brevity train here. The example you gave before was one of the Warren Finance Select Board. And we know we have a liaison from the Select Board, okay? We have no liaison with the school committee, okay?
Right, you have people that you send to them, but you don't have somebody that they send to you. Okay.
So whatever goes on in a Warren Finance Committee meeting, unless somebody wants to watch cable a week and a half later, or happens to be at the meeting, is not going to hear any of that. There's really no official means of feeding any of that stuff back. So for school articles, what I'm hearing is that, you know, it is basically, here you go, up or down. And down is not necessarily a productive thing unless you have a good, valid, reasonable, rational alternative to suggest. I certainly plan on being at all the school board meetings. I know a couple of members of the board are going to be at the school board meetings, but that's a single directional flow. It doesn't go the other way.
So when we're looking at crafting a more precise ordinance to put before the people, that would be something that we would want to perhaps include in the discussion and talk to the school board as well. Perhaps. And get their input on
it would certainly be expanding upon the guidelines or the bounds that were intended by this particular article. You know, there's elements that it does not address. So perhaps if we do it, we need to do it a little bit more completely so that it leaves fewer questions.
Since the school is a department, at least I think they still are, maybe they're not, why would it be incumbent upon them to send to you a representative any more than it would be to have the road commissioners have a representative every meeting? If it doesn't affect them, why would they come to the other meetings?
I think that I wasn't suggesting, or I don't think anyone was suggesting.
Well, my thought here was expanding upon the fact that, you know, Ted is a liaison to the Warrant and Finance Committee.
Yeah.
So if we need to feed back in some subtle or not so subtle way back to the people who write the articles, the town articles, we would merely need to state that at a Warrant and Finance Committee meeting, right. And one or more select people are going to be present at that meeting, and it gets back to them.
Well,
right?
when you
not necessarily true of the school board.
When you talk about the warrant and the articles for the school board, when you have a meeting here, and the entire school board is going to be here.
I think when we do a joint meeting.
Well, they're going to be here. If there's something coming out for the school, the entire school board is going to be here.
Right. Well, the Warrant and Finance Committee will go to the school, but yes.
Right, but to gather information, just like they go to Selectmen's meetings, I assume, to gather information. Mm-hmm. The same thing. Yeah. But there's no incumbency upon them to
well, the school board,
to come to other things that don't affect them.
The school board doesn't vote their articles until they have the joint meeting with the Warrant and Finance Committee.
Right, so they could get input.
Yeah.
But that's the bottom. That's okay, here they are. What do you think? You know, it's a week before town meeting or 2 weeks or whatever. I mean, there's precious little time to have give and take by that time. That's
okay.
That's
I guess the point is, if you find an article unacceptable and you make a recommendation against it, you have to realize that town meeting is governed by, in most of the cases now, the main moderator's manual, which is very similar to Robert's rules. So if in fact, I don't know if you guys have seen me do this before, we had a couple times with the school articles, get up and announce that you are voting with the side that's going to vote it down, and it gives you the opportunity to, since you voted on the prevailing side, to reconsider the article. Otherwise it's dead. So that, people have to think, they have to use the main moderator's manual rules. If you can prove that you voted in the prevailing side, you can bring it back up so that you can get another thing for something that you have to do. I mean, there's a reason why they have those rules, you have to use them. Right. And if it goes through, like when we wanted to buy that house across there, where somebody comes up here and says, I move we dispense with the article, and it might have been me, I don't remember. But everybody says yes, and anything to speak about, nobody said a word, all in favor, aye, gone. So we had, the whole place was full to buy that thing, and they were so shocked, it was gone before they had a chance to say aye, yes, or boo. But I mean, that's the way the rules are. So if in fact, you have to preserve your right to reconsider for those things. You have to use the rules.
But Tom, I think we can all agree that, yes, the rules are there to be used, and it would be nice if everyone understood how town meeting fully runs. But in the ideal world, I think what Paul is looking for and what we all are probably looking for, is a way to have the Warrant and Finance Committee, when they're making their recommendations, if the recommendation is no, instead of coming to town meeting and hashing that out on the floor, if there's a chance to reconcile that prior to the warrant going out, that would be ideal.
Well, doesn't the Warrant and Finance Committee recommend, okay, the selectmen recommend $120,000, and the Warrant and Finance Committee recommends $80,000. My experience is, somebody says, why did you guys recommend $80,000, and somebody gets up and speaks and tells the body why.
Okay.
So.
And that is appropriate, but what I think that Paul is looking for, if I understand correctly, is what are the mechanisms that allow the Warrant and Finance Committee to engage with the people that are writing the warrants and to come up with some consensus, or at least get closer? Because what if the Warrant and Finance Committee, what if it's a...
Make them show up at your meetings.
Thanks, Tom. My suggestion is if you have a Warrant and Finance Committee meeting and you come up with a decision on the school articles, you can immediately call the superintendent and let him know he's got the information, and then he'll get it to the board.
Okay. Well, and a very key element here, which I take pains to stress, is that, what we're looking for is a mutually agreeable procedure which, maintains a certain degree of harmony and cooperation among all involved. So we don't have this thing going on.
Exactly.
We don't need that anymore.
Right.
I think we've killed this one.
Shall we go to question 2?
Shall we?
It is understood by all committees and boards which work together during the budgeting process that sufficient time must be given for the receiving group to properly evaluate received materials, and in turn pass on the result in a potentially reiterative manner until the article has been fully evaluated.
Sorry.
Paul, how do we have conversations together? We must just go round and round. Okay. It is generally not possible to avoid all timing problems, but proper attention to this point during initial scheduling should help to keep stress and conflict to manageable levels as town meeting approaches. It would be wise for such committees and boards to collaborate on agreeable set of document exchange guidelines. That is not covered in the ordinance, I think, at all. So that...
Sort of.
Where do you feel
Well, the first one, I think that's been superseded, I believe. It talks about articles for annual town meetings, shall be filed in August, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it doesn't really talk about inter-board exchanges, and it's sort of a moot point until you recognize that there is exchanges, and I think we've sort of have that working here, but not necessarily in an official manner, like, okay, here's a set of articles, we're going to comment on it, go back for rework or whatever. That's not exactly happening. It's more of a, if you can get something changed before it hits the town body on meeting day, great. But it looks to me like that's, for the most part, not really going to be happening.
Well, I think
that's not really going to be full circle.
I don't think that it even is probably in the best interest to try to legislate interdepartment exchanges. I mean, that really does have to end up being something that you guys work out with each department that you're looking for information for. And I can see the concern, if the Warrant and Finance Committee is going to be making a recommendation on the fire department budget, it is, of course, best if the Warrant and Finance Committee can see that budget a couple of weeks prior to needing to make a recommendation, so that they can individually read it over, meet as a committee to discuss it ahead of time. I can understand where you're going with that, but I don't think it's possible for us to say, okay, the departments must have their budgets to the Warrant and Finance Committee within X number of days of meeting, because meeting schedules change all the time too.
Right.
So that's just a matter, I think, of individual and professional respect. Does anyone have any?
Well, we were talking about that earlier tonight. We're going to discuss earlier this year, the budget for this year, and we'll give the department heads a deadline in order for them to get their budgets to us, for us to look them over, and also get them to the Finance Committee. And then we'll go through the process of having each department head coming in front of us at one of our selectmen's meetings to explain what their budget is about. But the Warrant and Finance Committee will already have had the budget, what they're requesting, and then they can hear the reasons. You can come and ask questions.
What if we were to do that jointly? What if we were to
meeting with them?
Have like
do it on an odd Thursday
What
night.
What if the department heads were to come to a joint meeting of the Warrant and Finance Committee and the Select Board to present their budgets?
As I say, the selectmen should be at the Warrant and Finance Committee meetings.
And
Yeah, but if we're holding it as a selectmen's meeting, and invite the Warren and Finance Committee to join us, is what you're saying.
The thing, what has screwed this entire thing up has been the change in fiscal year. When we did it in March, and we had a calendar year, it was so much easier. Everything was done. You had know what you spent. We have forced it back now, so that we're trying to meet, you're trying to make decisions 5 or 6 months into the year.
Right, for the next.
So it's practically impossible. I mean, if I would do anything, I'd change the town meeting to 3 months after July. That's what I'd do.
Wow. An October town meeting?
Or change the fiscal year back. Whatever it is. But I mean, that gives you, and the selectmen can only spend what, the 1/12 or whatever they had to spend in the year previous for the first 3 months. But then you have real info, and you have a time, you know, the minute the year is over, everybody knows about what they've spent. And you've got 3 months to get real information and make a real decision. As it is now, the pressure is on you guys because they don't see articles till the last minute. Right. Because you've been scrambling trying to write them, and you can't get that warrant together in any timely fashion. It's impossible for you to give, other than having, you know, just like you say, preliminary budgets on 7 months into a fiscal year. People don't know how much they're going to spend, how much is going to, what's going to happen. I mean, it's a very difficult situation, and you find that it's very difficult the way it is now. But if you look at the towns that have March town meetings, the Warren and Finance Committee or the Budget Committee, whatever they have, has a lot better time. I mean, it's because you've got real numbers, real info. You can do zero-based budgeting because you know exactly what was spent. You're not going, right now, the worst part is you're going on last year's budget. You're not going on last year's expense. You're going 2 years ago's actual expense and last year's budget. So everything is based on increases over the budget, not increases in actual spending. That's why it's been totally messed up for a long time, ever since we changed they changed the fiscal year to match the school.
The only salvation is that when we are looking at what we have, and this is what the board did last year, and I think it did work out fairly well, when we're crafting the budget 8-9 months in to the fiscal year, we are able to look at, well, what percentage of the budget have we spent thus far? If we're 3/4 of the way through the year and we have already, and it's not the plowing budget, because that's different. I mean, we aren't going to spend that in May, we hope.
It's always still a little bit of magic
that's involved. But you are able to make some fairly good estimates for that. So,
not as good as having the books closed.
I agree. Unfortunately, we are where we are at the moment, and I think Paul is looking for guidelines to get us through this fiscal year. So, I guess with the interdepartmental, trading of information, that's going to just have to be a polite, respectful, as soon as we've got this stuff. And I think that we can solve a lot of that by having our initial meetings with the department heads be together with the Warrant and Finance Committees. I mean, there really is probably not a need for the department heads to present to our board and to present to the Warrant and Finance Committee separately. They probably would prefer to have one presentation, and if we all are hearing the information at the same time, some of that massaging can take place at that point, and then we'll have everyone involved in it. The transfer station manager, the fire department, the fire chief, and the Warrant Finance Committee and the Select Board all at the same time able to discuss their budgets is probably the most effective way.
And that typically happens at one meeting, though? The different heads come in at
yeah,
one meeting?
What we can do is, where we're meeting twice a month, we have another Thursday night in between where we will have a joint Warrant and Finance and Selectmen's meeting and only talk about budget items, nothing else on the agenda.
And it would be a workshop, actually.
Yeah,
so,
workshop.
We wouldn't be voting on anything. You'd just be, the department heads would be presenting their budgets. I mean, I only have 1 year to go on for both things, 1 year of Warrant and Finance Committee, 1 year of Select Board. And my experience last year was that the department heads came into our board separately in our office and showed us their budgets. And then they went to the Warrant and Finance Committee at a separate time. And I think historically that is what maybe was done. But I think if we were to combine those, some of these issues would resolve by being able to get the article also up and running earlier, because then we're not waiting on feedback back and forth. We're able to get all of the information to everyone it affects immediately, and then we can go on.
I think it's difficult to do all in one meeting. You're going to have a minute.
Well, you break them up, yeah. We're not going to, yeah.
No, with each individual thing. No, in other words, the Selectmen's meeting is gathering information to write the warrant article.
Right.
The Warrant and Finance Committee's job is to act on that warrant article.
But that's
without the
separate.
warrant article, they don't know how you're going to vote.
But it's a
And they're going
separate,
to have to call them back in, when you work on the roads or whatever, to speak, to defend what they want originally compared to what the selectmen are recommending.
Right.
You know, I mean,
they
they're
may
gonna
or
have
they
to
may
go
not.
twice.
I mean, in theory, if they were hearing the defense for the budget request going forward, and this is also another philosophical discussion that we may not see eye to eye on. If the road commissioner comes forward to us as an elected official and says, this is the budget I'd like to request to the town, I am hard pressed to say, I won't let you present that to the town. My job is to discover and execute the will of the people. I can't discover the will of the people if I don't put forward what they've asked for. So I think that if the road commissioner or the fire chief comes before us and says, this is what I'd like to ask for, then probably I'm going to say, all right, that's up to the town, and then we're going to make a recommendation about how we feel about it.
That is fine, 99% of the time, but that is not without limit. There are times when the selectmen acting as a board are going to have to write a different article than any department head requests.
But we'd really like to not have that happen.
Right, no question.
Okay.
Idealism and actuality are...
99% is a pretty high percentage. Ready to go on to next question,
I
please?
think the only real outstanding question that we really haven't talked about too much at this point is the thing about the bottom line.
Oh yeah, I like this
You know,
question.
do we go with the low bidder, basically, no matter what we get for it? Or do we use a little common sense and, you know, massage all the other stuff in? Because the article as written essentially talks about financial recommendation or something of the kind.
Well, it says-
financial impact to the town.
Right.
What does that mean?
But that is regarding the special articles. I think that you raised some good questions, ma'am.
No, that's regarding the regular.
It's in the same sentence as the special articles.
It says...
Is there even a comma there?
There's not even a comma. You have not separated thoughts in any way, shape, or form. The sentence reads, the committee shall investigate special articles within the warrant to obtain factual data or surveys to determine financial impact on the town. There's no, and this again,
It says the same thing about the regular article.
no it doesn't. It says the committee shall give a recommendation on all articles of the warrant except those pertaining to municipal election. It doesn't use the word financial, which is what Paul is referencing. So yet again, that can be something that we can use more precise language, but may I read people your questions so that they can understand why I thought it was...
Hold up 1 second.
Yes, Brian.
I thought that was coming.
I don't know why with all this brevity.
I know. We're lousy with brevity. Well, I'm hoping that we only hit our heads against the wall once, and then we'll be done, and we can move on.
You're thirsty? Okay.
I'm just trying to do that off camera.
Yeah. Very thoughtful of you, Brian. All right. All right, so going back to the questions that Paul raised, and this was a great one. Is the purpose of the Warrant and Finance Committee to monitor the financial bottom line only? Or should articles not only be considered from a pure financial impact, can I afford it, but also from its effective value? What will I get for my money and how valuable is that? And possible negative effects of inaction. Will it cost more to replace it later than to maintain it today? And what do I expect my financial resources will be when that happens? Article 46, which we're not really using because it was trumped, suggests big picture, and Article 55 suggests bottom line only. We discussed this in our office very briefly, and then it was time to come here. My thought, and this is just my personal opinion, is that the Warrant Finance Committee, I think, during their meetings, has always discussed it as a big picture, but when it comes to the warrant itself, they're quoting a figure, they're quoting a number, but they're probably coming up with that recommendation based on their big picture conversation. Is that...
So we're not necessarily talking low bidder wins it kind of a thing.
No, and you guys don't really ever get into actual bidding, to be, but yeah, I mean.
Metaphorical, I'm big
Right.
on metaphor.
Yes. No, I think that the people of the town, one of the reasons that the Warrant and Finance Committee recommendations have historically been what wins the day at town meeting is because they are a larger board with more insight and opinions coming in, and they have taken the time to say, I think that they've always taken a big picture approach, as is that's kind of their responsibility, in my opinion, is to say, and I love your question about, you know, will it cost more to replace it later than to maintain it today? What do I expect my financial resources will be when that happens? That sort of forward thinking is really what crafts strong guidance.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm thinking in terms of, I mean, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that common sense should prevail. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, we are, in a way, representing, or we're willing to dive, okay, here comes another metaphor.
Love it.
We're willing to dive into the pool, okay, and really become immersed in what this really means in the bigger picture. And so advise the town body, because, you know, I mean, when I'm sitting there in the audience and I go to, you know, hey, you're lucky I'm at town meeting, you know, here I am. What should I be voting on? Well, I don't really know anything about that. Does anybody really looked into it? That's what we're there to do. And we're there to do it on perhaps a larger scale than we would in our household, but it's really the same questions.
Right.
You know, all those considerations. You know, should I always go with the low ball? No, I shouldn't, because that's pretty much what I'm going to get.
Well, I think that, and that's, so in my ideal philosophical government world, the warrant articles get drafted to reflect what the department heads have requested, because that's, in my opinion, what their role is. They're there to put forward a budget. Now, when our board is making recommendations on those requests that we're putting forward to the people, because it's the people's right to decide what they wish to spend, we should be doing the same thing. We should be answering all those questions that the Warrant and Finance Committee is coming up with. So let's say that the transfer station requests $200,000. Okay, well, we put forward $200,000, but our board is certainly not going to, well, hold on. We actually might do that already. Let's make it $500,000, so I'm sure we're ahead of schedule. You know, we can say, okay, we'll put it on the warrant, but our recommendation is going to be a strong no. It's going to be a strong, we actually think it should be this amount of money, because we think it should be flatlined.
And then we can have a town meeting.
So you would write the article and then recommend against passing the article itself.
And there is and there is controversy about that, because it is our warrant. And so there is definitely philosophical difference about should the select board be putting forward articles that they're going to vote, they're going to recommend against.
If you're constrained to do what you did, you know, as requested, but you can't see the sense of it.
Well, we're not constrained to do what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying that's my philosophical ideal.
No. I mean, you said that you are charged with writing an article according to what the department heads say they want.
Well, we're not constrained by that. I'm saying that's my philosophical.
Okay.
Mr. Vanel, did you want to speed things up? Is there something you'd like us to do?
Yeah, I said this is like watching paint dry. We are getting so involved in minutia and stuff that isn't going to make a
Did you want to come?
beans.
I'd invite you.
Metaphor.
I'd invite you to the mic, but I realize it's futile.
Okay, I want to make a metaphorical correction. It is not, what he is suggesting, I think, is not taking the low bidder, since that's what I do every day. And I think you get a pretty good job that way. But it is being cheap, penny wise and pound foolish. The job of this committee is to make a recommendation that prevents the town from being so cheap that they shoot themselves in the wallet. So that's the important thing. It's not the low bidder one kind of bothers me, since I'm a general contractor and that's what I do all the time.
Okay, we'll choose a different one. But yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're done. I know you're all disappointed. I think I have all the answers that I need, and we'll be able to hammer the rest of it out on our own steam.
Yeah, and if members show to every one of the meetings as the process is going on, the information comes out on a regular basis, and then you get back and be shared with the meeting. As far as for the town information, anything you guys need, you let me know at one of your committee meetings. I'll come back and share it with these two, and we'll assign somebody in the town hall to get the documents you need or whatever research you need done. We can do that for you.
Okay.
And I think that just so that to alleviate some concerns, just like last year, I attended the Warrant Finance Committee meetings that had to do with the town's budget, and I think our intent is for us to do that again this year.
Yeah.
That Ted is the liaison for these initial meetings when you guys are getting yourselves set up and figuring out where you're going. And then when it comes time for our budget, we will be there en masse to be part of that budgeting process. And I will take what arrows fly at me for not wanting to intervene on the school budget.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll see a lot of each other because I've got the school board too. So.
Right. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, amendment to the fee schedule for fax requests. This is very simple. Currently, faxes in the town hall cost $1. We have had some issues with people phoning from distant locations and wanting things faxed and not wanting to pay for it over the phone, etc. So from now on, fax requests over the phone will be $2, and you will be faxed with your fax request a bill that you will be required to send in your check for to the town. So that is going to be what happens with that. Policy on daily deposit procedure. We've had a little bit of change up with the new treasurer, and she has requested a new policy for daily deposits be followed, and it reads as follows. The remote deposit capture system service, RDCS, is to be used for the daily depositing of checks received by the town into the primary checking account held with Sanford Institute of Savings. At the end of the business day, the town clerk tax collector will cash out and submit the daily cash out to the treasurer's office in a locked location. The following business day, the treasurer will process the deposit and return a receipt to the town clerk tax collector. The deposited checks will be secured in a locked location by the treasurer where they are to be kept for a minimum of 90 days. The checks shall be destroyed by the treasurer in a secure manner after the holding period not to exceed 180 days. The cash collected will be secured in the treasurer's safe. Once per week or when cash reaches an amount agreed upon, whichever comes first, the treasurer will drive the cash to the bank for deposit. And she is asking us to accept that.
I make a motion we accept the policy on daily deposit procedure as written.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, so be it. No, we got it. No one's going to get shot, Mr. Chase. It's all good.
What day is it?
Notice that was left vague, as was the amount. Next item on the... Okay. The part that should not be like paint drying for Mr. Vanel. Any other business? Mr. Long.
Dennis Long. I would just like to publicly thank Mr. Winchell for the great job he did on the San Page Road. It's very nice, and I've heard a lot of compliments about it. And my understanding also is that he came in a little bit under budget also.
Yes, thank you.
And so that's very nice.
Yep. Yeah. Send out a kudos to both of our road commissioners for continuing to do excellent jobs. So thank you, both of you. Nice job, guys. Okay, any other business? Okay, any announcements?
We are going to get in contact with the folks that have decided to be on the policy committee and hopefully get that going. We have a policy that we need you to get started on immediately, a drug policy for employees, and we have to do a change in that. Maybe Lorraine, if we can get in touch with everybody next week and try and set it up. What we were thinking is on a Thursday night, opposite our selectmen's night, so we've got the next 2 weeks. We don't have a selectmen's meeting, but we have our selectmen's hour, so if you folks that are on that committee are willing to meet with us on that Thursday night, either next Thursday or the following Thursday.
So the 30th or the 7th?
Right, so we can get that started.
Yep. No. Oh,
well, we could do it earlier.
We could do it a little earlier if
Yeah,
people
we can
want
do
to come in
6 if you want.
earlier, but...
We're here from 5 to 7 anyways.
Just tell me when.
Well, Lorraine...
Well, you've got Barbara and Marion and Virginia Shea
and Elaine.
Elaine here tonight.
So what time do you
Ladies,
want to
what's your pleasure? Earlier or later? 6:30. Wait, I like that. That shows a willingness to compromise. This committee's going to be very successful. That's great.
6:30 on next Thursday.
Do you want to do it on the 30th? Let's get moving. Sounds great.
Did you get a copy of?
I will get those, I'll get that to Lorraine, and we can, what we have right now, we have a drug testing policy that we'd like to implement. We have a copy of Shapley's drug testing policy, which I have started to amend to fit our needs by subbing in the word Acton to where it says Shapley to start with. But we have some differences between the two towns. We can't just simply take what Shapley does. So I can get that as a rough draft to each of you guys, and you can start looking at it from there. The only thing that I have changed thus far is the simple transition of the, yes. And there was a couple other points that I switched up because we wish to be testing not only our CDL drivers, but all personnel that use equipment.
Do we have a present drug policy?
We do.
We do, but it's only for CDL drivers.
And it's very limited in scope. It only has 6 people currently being tested. And
Is there anything in that that needs to be also included in the present?
You guys can, I will get you both, okay? Thank you for bringing that up, it's a good point. The other, I have an announcement. Oh, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. We're going to ask for volunteers to reform the cable committee. We've lost our director, he has resigned, and we need to get the cable committee, or get the cable channel back on track. To have some way of figuring out where we're going to go forward with it. Do we want to go back to a director? Do we want to have a cable committee again? So we'd like people to put in your names to let us know that you're interested in getting back on that committee and getting that up and going again.
Yes.
If the director has resigned, is the resignation public knowledge, and can we get a copy of it?
We don't have a written resignation. We accepted his verbal resignation. Okay.
Flu clinic, Wednesday, 29th of September, 9 to 11,
Here at the town hall?
here at the town hall.
Okay, so flu shots will be available?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Also, on October 14th, there will be a bus trip. So that will be for seniors, and we will have tickets for sale for that coming up very shortly. So if you are interested, please see Lorraine. And we will be heading off to Lake Winnipesaukee and taking a cruise with the MS Mount Washington around Lake Winnipesaukee, and then doing a little shopping window or reel in Wolfboro, and then heading back. So it should be quite a nice day.
What's the age limit?
I think that as my children ages 10 and 12 will be going, I don't know if there's a real age limit, but it is intended for those in the perhaps 65 and over set.
You qualify, Tom.
Ooh.
I can only get senior discounts for half the places now.
So I don't know if the 65 is the politically correct cutoff for seniors. It's always a difficult question.
I got my AARP card when I was 49.
Oh, well, I don't think, well, anyway, I think if anyone of any age feels like hanging out with seniors, it's a really nice group of people, and they should be encouraged and welcome to attend. October 14th, a Thursday. For those seniors in our community that have been consistently coming to Owls, they are receiving, and have been helping with the fundraising, they are receiving one price. For the open community members, tickets will be $25 per person, which I think is an amazing deal. It includes the bus, it includes lunch, and it includes the cruise ship as well. So I think that it should be a great time. The bus is a lovely chartered bus with all sorts of amenities, so woo! And it was entirely done without tax dollars. I want to make that very clear, that it was done through fundraising efforts and volunteers, and really people did a great job. Thank you to the Sarahs and to Claire Bragg and Estelle Gore especially, really have been great in getting that to work out. Any other announcements, anybody?
What was the date for the flu shots?
29th,
October 29th?
September, next week.
Do we have a foot clinic coming up as well?
No, not till...
November?
We had one in September.
Okay, so November.
So we'll have one in November.
Okay. All right, then we won't worry about that. Okay.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.